Metroplex area with a sunny sky of mostly around 80 degrees. And based on the weather forecast for this week, it appears as if Texans will be enjoying sunny skies and temperatures peaking at the low 90s. Gorgeous days ahead for Texans. And to the news for today. SOAR is in preliminary conversations to partner with a host of diverse TV stations and other organizations, churches, ministries, nonprofits, and others, so as to serve all of your needs of soaring high effectively. Plans are also currently on the way to bring you live other events as they happen around the world. Continue to tune into your favorite station, SOAR TV Network, a place where we don't just fly, but soar higher. Thank you all for watching and enjoy the news on Africa as it happens.
United at the hearing with the various testimonies, the documents in the file, that funds were actually diverted to the detriment of the state of Côte d'Ivoire. Barring bad faith, we cannot see any political intent in this trial. The Abidjan court on Tuesday fined him nearly 7 million euros, ordered the confiscation of his Abidjan home, and barred him from civic duties for 5 years. It also issued a fresh arrest warrant for Soro, who is also the former parliament speaker and who is now effectively barred from contesting the election.
100 kilos of rice, 10 liters of oil and 10 kilograms of sugar, and a box of 18 pieces of soap. This is the box that 1 million Senegalese households will receive as food handouts of the government amid virus. This food aid was launched with the Senegalese Minister of Community Development, Mansour Faye. The minister said that this food aid sent to 1 million families could reach 8 to 10 million people. According to the World Bank, 16 million inhabitants live on less than $2 a day. As the Ramadan just started, the curfew and other restrictions are still ongoing on the country. It makes it more difficult for many families to get through the sanitary measures. The President Macky Sall declared a state of emergency and imposed a dusk-to-dawn curfew in a bid to curb the spread of the virus. The West African country has recorded 800 cases of COVID-19 and 9 deaths.
Various shades of technological innovations are springing up in an attempt to combat the deadly coronavirus. In Senegal, 3D printers are being used to create facial masks to augment the safety of frontline workers. In these small workshops, dozens of masks are printed and assembled every day before being delivered free of charges to hospitals, pharmacies and clinics. We saw that there were many initiatives in other countries to equip doctors. In Senegal, we have problems with equipment and resources. But since we have 3D printers, we started to manufacture because we can help. In the Liberian capital, Monrovia, inhabitants have set up neighborhood checkpoints to ascertain the temperature of those who come in while ensuring people wash their hands, a strategy they employed during the deadly Ebola crisis a few years back.
Liberians are still doubting that the sickness is not in the country. That's all their belief. So when they saw the guys putting those gates and things down, telling people to wash their hands, having the instrument testing, taking the temperatures and things, some try to get the art that indeed it is true.
Meanwhile, in South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa announced a $26 billion aid package to support the economy and the country's most vulnerable people. The announcement followed violent clashes with the police in some areas during the distribution of food packages.
Another significant area that requires massive additional expenditure is the relief of hunger and social distress in our communities across the country.
Some unique measures are also being employed in parts of Africa. People in Madagascar are enthusiastically consuming a herbal tea named COVID-19 Remedy. While some doubt the efficacy of the herbal brew, the Malagasy president, Andrew Rajoelina, said its effectiveness is noticeable in 7 days. On the African continent, strategies are multiplied to defeat the virus. UNICEF has also released a new version of Miriam Makiba's hit Pata Pata, performed by Benin's Angelique Kidjo.
Download the Africa News app for all the latest African and international news. Available on the App Store and on Google Play.
A fire destroys much of the main camp for displaced people in Bamako, Mali, where 1,000 people who fled violence take refuge. Ivorian court jails former Prime Minister Guillaume Soro to 20 years in jail on charges of embezzlement and money laundering.
In South Africa, the homeless are the most affected by containment measures that have been in place in the country for more than a month. With these restrictive measures, this very disadvantaged section of the population can no longer count on the generosity of motorists, shopkeepers or pedestrians. Without any social safety net, the destitute, mostly migrants living on begging, are today in a food and health emergency.
Our livelihood is centered on city begging. So now that the country is on lockdown, it is impossible for us to go out on the streets to look for donations.
Everywhere in town there is nobody to beg, so things become very tough, everything becomes tough, so we are living from hand to mouth.
This week, South Africa announced an increase in social assistance for the poor, the elderly and the disabled, but foreigners are excluded. According to the United Nations World Food Programme, at least 265 million people worldwide could face food insecurity by the end of the year.
A fire destroyed much of the main camp for displaced people in Bamako, where more than 1,000 people who fled the violence in central Mali have found refuge. No report on casualties was immediately available. And he says the fire caught us by surprise. We saw smoke from afar, and after about 20 minutes the fire had spread, and now we have lost many animal hides and sacks of rice. It's a hard blow for us. We don't know what to do. Myself, I've lost all my goats who were forced to run away, but some managed to escape. We lost our food supplies. The cause of the fire still remains unknown. At the moment, it is difficult to say what caused the fire. However, based on the information we gathered upon arrival at the site and our investigations, the fire came from the rubbish heap between the site and the public road. So the fire came from the rubbish heap. But as to what caused it, I cannot tell you. According to humanitarian workers, the camp houses more than 1,000 people who are Fulani from central Mali who are chased out of their homes by a cycle of jihadists and inter-community violence. An Ivorian court on Tuesday sentenced exiled former Prime Minister Guillaume Soro to 20 years in jail on charges of embezzlement and money laundering. The Ivorian state prosecutor hailed the verdict as a dawn to democracy that will usher in transparency in the fight against corruption in the West African state. And he says this decision marks the beginning of a new era in Côte d'Ivoire. Corrupt people must be tracked down wherever they are so that our state can fulfill its commitment in the fight against corruption, which is so dear to our client, the state of Côte d'Ivoire. Soro, a former rebel leader and a candidate in the presidential elections this October, currently lives in France. He was accused of buying a house in Abidjan in 2007 with public money. And he continues by saying, the trial is far from being politically motivated. You noted at the hearing with the various testimonies, the documents in the file, that funds were actually diverted to the detriment of the state of Côte d'Ivoire. Barring bad faith, we cannot see any political intent in this trial. The Abidjan court on Tuesday fined him nearly 7 million euros, ordered the confiscation of his Abidjan home, and barred him from civic duties for 5 years. It also issued a fresh arrest warrant for Soro, who is also the former parliament speaker and who is now effectively barred from contesting the election.
100 kilos of rice, 10 liters of oil and 10 kilograms of sugar, and a box of 18 pieces of soap. This is the box that 1 million Senegalese households will receive as food handouts of the government amid the virus. This food aid was launched with the Senegalese Minister of Community Development, Mansour Faye. The minister said that this food aid sent to 1 million families could reach 8 to 10 million people. According to the World Bank, 16 million inhabitants live on less than $2 a day. As the Ramadan just started, the curfew and other restrictions are still ongoing on the country. It makes it more difficult for many families to get through the sanitary measures. The President Macky Sall declared a state of emergency and imposed a dusk-to-dawn curfew in a bid to curb the spread of the virus. The West African country has recorded 800 cases of COVID-19 and 9 deaths.
Every day on African News, stay connected to the world of science and technology. From the environment to health, from robotics to space exploration, SciTech unveils all the latest technological breakthroughs. Discover the most innovative projects and meet the people who are changing our daily life and shaping our tomorrow. SciTech takes you where innovation is every day on African News and africannews.com.
Nigeria's move to ease in restrictions on coronavirus threat has attracted different reactions. President Buhari on Monday promised to lift the lockdown for millions of people in major cities from May the 4th. Lagos residents have welcomed the move and are eagerly waiting for the return to normalcy.
People ready to abide the lockdown, to stay inside. Nobody wants to come out, but you are inside. It's a two suffer. You run for Corolla, you suffer hungry inside house at the same time. So you know, you cannot work. But if people go to their work, at least they make a little, come back their home. Yes, sir. Then from 8 o'clock in the night, the lockdown will happen till 6 a.m.
In other countries, I think they lock down as well, and the government is assisting them. If they are assisting us, there will be no problem. Even though it takes a year, if government can take care of their people, people will keep quiet. It's because they are not taking care of the people that people are complaining.
Once they find out that it is increasing the number of cases, they can come back again and put a severe issue where everybody will be at home. But let us have a little breathing space and see how it will work. Yeah.
These new measures include a nationwide nighttime curfew, mandatory wearing of face masks, and a ban on non-essential travel between different regions.
Madagascar police forced citizens caught outside without a coronavirus face mask to sweep pavements on Monday. Law enforcement officials said President Andre Rajoelina has made it compulsory to wear face coverings outdoors in the capital Antananarivo as well as other cities to curb the spread of coronavirus. There should be no such sanctions. They should not force people to wear a mask. I'm going to be careful now. Wear a mask when I go out on the street and hide when I smoke. Around 500 people were penalized on Monday and 25 people were sentenced on the spot and forced to sweep the capital's dusty streets. To date, the Indian Ocean island nation has detected 128 cases of coronavirus. No fatalities have been recorded so far and 85 patients have recovered.
Water shortage in Niger is challenging COVID-19 prevention campaigns. Access to water is key in stopping the pandemic worldwide, despite the availability of hand-washing devices in many places. Omar Saleh is resident in Niamey, the capital city. We were told to wash our hands 3 times, 4 times and up to 5 times a day, so we have to wash our hands frequently. This is the 4th time I've come here and there is still no water and it's only dripping. What's going on? You spend an hour filling the canister. Many street vendors in the country do not seem to have enough information about the situation. Most of them fetch water from surrounding neighborhoods. There are times when tap is completely dry, but lately it's been running a bit, and we are also in the Ramadan period. People want enough water to meet their daily needs. Niger's networks of journalists for water, hygiene and sanitation has launched a campaign geared towards encouraging citizens to make good use of the resources at their disposal. We know that it is difficult, but we must always do with the means available to not give in the disease. Naturally, even with means placed, we have to save enough water when it is flowing to effectively respond to the concerns of the moment and respect good hygiene practices, mainly hand washing with soap. In Niger, the average daily use of water is estimated at under 20 liters per person, despite the WHO 50 liters recommendation.
Want to get the latest on business? From African to international financial hubs and major players, from small and medium-sized firms, in Business Africa, we examine and evaluate the top financial stories. Join me on Business Africa, only on African News and africannews.com.
age-old tradition lives on in the Egyptian capital Cairo's Dab al-Hamar district. The creative and intricate work of dyeing fabrics passed down through generations. Salama Mahmoud Salama's dye shop is one of the very few remaining places practicing the craft. Their workshop is a myriad of workers dipping threads in hot, colorful baths, as others before them have done for over 120 years. The yarns that come to us are used in home sewing, knitting, carpets, and wool used in the manufacturing of t-shirts. The work here does not stop. We are the only workshop in Egypt that still dyes by hand. The colorful threads are wound into handmade shoes, rugs, and drapes, and sold across Egypt as well as sent out to Sudan, United States, and across the world. We have clients from all over Egypt, Sudan, a client from the United States also, and a Palestinian client. Of the 23 historic dye shops that used to service the city, only a handful remain. And a rise in the dye price, cheaper industry products are among other challenges the workshops are facing. For the remaining few, they hope their creative work can withstand competition from foreign products that are hurting the homegrown textile industry.
We thank each and every one of the human health professionals who are part of this team for their personal commitment.
A fire destroys much of the main camp for displaced people in Bamako, Mali, where 1,000 people who fled violence take refuge. Ivorian court jails former Prime Minister Guillaume Soro to 20 years in jail on charges of embezzlement and money laundering.
In South Africa, the homeless are the most affected by containment measures that have been in place in the country for more than a month. With these restrictive measures, this very disadvantaged section of the population can no longer count on the generosity of motorists, shopkeepers or pedestrians. Without any social safety net, the destitute, mostly migrants living on begging, are today in a food and health emergency.
Our livelihood is centered on city begging. So now that the country is on lockdown, it is impossible for us to go out on the streets to look for donations.
Everywhere in town there is nobody to beg, so things become very tough, everything become tough, so we are living from hand to mouth.
This week, South Africa announced an increase in social assistance for the poor, the elderly and the disabled, but foreigners are excluded. According to the United Nations World Food Programme, at least 265 million people worldwide could face food insecurity by the end of the year.
A fire destroyed much of the main camp for displaced people in Bamako, where more than 1,000 people who fled the violence in central Mali have found refuge. No report on casualties was immediately available. And he says the fire caught us by surprise. We saw smoke from afar, and after about 20 minutes the fire had spread, and now we have lost many animal hides and sacks of rice. It's a hard blow for us. We don't know what to do. Myself, I've lost all my goats who were forced to run away, but some managed to escape. We lost our food supplies. The cause of the fire still remains unknown. At the moment, it is difficult to say what caused the fire. However, based on the information we gathered upon arrival at the site and our investigations, the fire came from the rubbish heap between the site and the public road. So the fire came from the rubbish heap. But as to what caused it, I cannot tell you. According to humanitarian workers, the camp houses more than 1,000 people who are Fulani from central Mali who are chased out of their homes by a cycle of jihadists and inter-community violence. An Ivorian court on Tuesday sentenced exiled former Prime Minister Guillaume Soro to 20 years in jail on charges of embezzlement and money laundering. The Ivorian state prosecutor hailed the verdict as a dawn to democracy that will usher in transparency in the fight against corruption in the West African state. And he says, according to humanitarian workers, the camp houses more than 1,000 people who are Fulani from central Mali who are chased out of their homes by a cycle of jihadists and inter-community violence. An Ivorian court on Tuesday sentenced exiled former Prime Minister Guillaume Soro to 20 years in jail on charges of embezzlement and money laundering. The Ivorian state prosecutor hailed the verdict as a dawn to democracy that will usher in transparency in the fight against corruption in the West African state. And he says this decision marks the beginning of a new era in Côte d'Ivoire. Corrupt people must be tracked down wherever they are so that our state can fulfill its commitment in the fight against corruption, which is so dear to our client, the state of Côte d'Ivoire. Soro, a former rebel leader and a candidate in the presidential elections this October, currently lives in France. He was accused of buying a house in Abidjan in 2007 with public money. And he continues by saying, the trial is far from being politically motivated. He noted at the hearing with the various testimonies, the documents in the file, that funds were actually diverted to the detriment of the state of Côte d'Ivoire. Barring bad faith, we cannot see any political intent in this trial. The Abidjan court on Tuesday fined him nearly 7 million euros, ordered the confiscation of his Abidjan home, and barred him from civic duties for 5 years. It also issued a fresh arrest warrant for Soro, who is also the former parliament speaker and who is now effectively barred from contesting the election.
100 kilos of rice, 10 liters of oil and 10 kilograms of sugar, and a box of 18 pieces of soap. This is the box that 1 million Senegalese households will receive as food handouts of the government amid virus. This food aid was launched with the Senegalese Minister of Community Development, Mansour Faye. The minister said that this food aid sent to 1 million families could reach 8 to 10 million people. According to the World Bank, 16 million inhabitants live on less than $2 a day. As the Ramadan just started, the curfew and other restrictions are still ongoing on the country. It makes it more difficult for many families to get through the sanitary measures. The President Macky Sall declared a state of emergency and imposed a dusk-to-dawn curfew in a bid to curb the spread of the virus. The West African country has recorded 800 cases of COVID-19 and 9 deaths.
Yahya Jammeh, the president who boasted he could be in power for 1 billion years.
Gambians create dictators. We ourselves as citizens, we make Jammeh to become a dictator.
I can say I'm better than anyone you would ever have in this country.
In the end, he managed 22 years of corruption, torture, and brutal political repression.
They came with live bullet and killed a lot of students.
But in 2016, the impossible happened.
My father strongly believed that Jammeh could be deposed.
Inspired by a campaign of radical protest, direct action, and revolutionary music, the people rose up, defying an attempt to rig the vote and bringing in a new elected president, Adama Barrow. At a time of global uncertainty, Gambians showed the world the power of democracy.
That was the first time an opposition leader won election. That was the first time it happened in this country.
Nobody had ever thought that one could defeat a dictator.
But as Gambians look to the future, there are concerns that the new president has been too slow to remove some of the worst offenders of the previous regime.
And they apply by the old mindset. The first thing you think of when you see people protesting, hey, no, okay, shut up, hey, put your hey, da-da-da-da.
This is the story of how Gambians pulled off an extraordinary political heist and of the challenge they now face in escaping the shadow of Jammeh's rule.
We are on our way to Kanilai. Kanilai is the home of the former president. So today we would say what a luxury the president lived both in, his normal official palace and the palace he built for himself in his hometown.
Mohammed Sandeng and Kifa Barahama are two activists who grew up in the dark, deadly shadow of Gambia's former president, Yahya Jammeh. Both have first-hand experience of his brutality. Today, they're visiting the palace that was a symbol of his excess. On these grounds, Jammeh spent thousands of dollars on a personal zoo.
He used our funds to do all of this, to get all these animals from wherever they came from, and he's been feeding them with public money, obviously, and then there have been hundreds of thousands of Gambians outside there that really are living below the poverty line.
Jammeh and his inner circle looted at least $975 million of public funds. When he went into exile in 2017, age 51, he left the country with a debt of over $1 billion.
It's a relief knowing, Kanilai, a part of Gambia, is no more, a captive land, I would say, or let's say, it's no more a captured piece of land that has been thrown into whatever somebody wants, one person wants,
Jammeh first came to power in a military coup in 1994. As a young lieutenant leading a temporary military government, he promised a fresh start for Gambia. His coup came after decades of rule by Gambia's first post-independence leader, Dawda Jawara, a period marred by unemployment and allegations of corruption.
We have no plans to stay long. All we are here for is to set a just system.
One of the young Gambians who witnessed Jammeh's rise to power was Yankuba Dabo.
They ushered into a new Gambia, which would create a lot of opportunity for everyone. And obviously, the mantra of the military junta at the time was transparency, probity, and tranquility. So this was something that resonated with everybody.
Fighting corruption, fighting nepotism, fighting Africa's disintegration.
During the 2 years of Jammeh, the first year, we are part of the guys who were really supporting him at the time because we wanted change.
But once Jammeh had power, he showed no sign of letting go. He used both the police and a personal security team known as the Junglers to ruthlessly cement his rule. Initially deployed primarily against political enemies, this use of violence spilled out into the open.
He said a lot of things. He promised the Gambian a lot of things. But at the end, early 2000, he started attacking the population.
In April 2000, the streets of Westfield, just outside the capital Banjul, were filled with student protesters. One of their aims was to seek justice for the reported rape of a schoolgirl by a police officer.
At the time, I think there was this perception that the security forces or members of the security forces could do anything to anybody and got away with it. So the student went out there to protest against what happened to their colleague, but also to protest against the whole status quo at the time.
I was in grade 5. I was just in school and I heard people shouting. Then that's the time some other students came to our class and said that we all need to go out. There is something that has happened. They have killed our colleague. They have killed our friends.
And that protest turned crazy. I remember that. I was like there with my uncle Lamembo. He was taking me to school. And we were like right up the block at Church's Town and it was all blocked up.
I've seen people falling down. I didn't know whether they were shot, but I've seen people falling down, people crying, students crying.
14 students were killed. Many more were seriously injured.
I was shot behind from the knee. The bullet entered back of the knee and went out of the kneecap. They came with live bullets. Those are the ones who came with the bullets and start firing at us and kill a lot of students. That was the turning point of my life. My aims and objectives were to be a doctor. And since then, no career development, no job, no opportunity for us, me and the rest of my colleagues.
He used that particular event, right, to show Gambians that you shut up, don't come out in the streets again. You feel what I'm saying? Keep to yourself, or you're probably going to end up like that.
That kind of public uprising never happened thereafter.
Over the course of his rule, Jammeh repeatedly denied allegations of human rights abuses.
Those who accuse me of human rights violations, well, I leave them to the Almighty Allah. Allah will reward them. Allah would judge between me and them.
Jammeh appeared to pay lip service to democracy, yet increasingly presented himself as ruler for life.
How long you stay in power does not determine your fate. It's what you do that determines your fate, as far as I'm concerned. But let me tell you one thing. My fate is in the hands of the Almighty Allah. I will deliver to the government people, and if I have to rule this country for 1 billion years, I will.
While Jammeh's repressive police tactics kept protesters off the streets, a new political space opened up online, in social media and music. In the early 2010s, rappers like Ali Cham, more popularly known as Killer Ace, began to exploit this new space that was far harder for Jammeh to control.
Yeah, this is where I live. I'm from Talinding, Forokono, man. You see what it's like? You know, it's a ghetto. Yeah, but the ghetto is where, you know, there's a lot of beauty in the ghetto. If you listen to my music and you listen to my song, you can tell it's based on my surroundings, you know what I'm saying? Everyday stress, yes, it leads to frustration. I'm walking down dirty roads, which ain't got enough pavement. Waiting for a van, we ain't got no bus stations. My peoples are working extra hard until their guts are aching. And at the end of the day, don't get enough payment.
Killer's music began addressing some of the most obvious failings of the Jammeh regime.
You got this, you know, oppressive system. You got poverty. You got these young children who, you know what I'm saying, are going through things that they shouldn't go through as children. So I'm like, come on.
In 2015, Killer released a song that would put his life in danger. Titled Kuboka Sigetaji, the track carried a simple but radical message.
I mentioned corruption. I mentioned the lack of freedom of expression. I mentioned arbitrary arrest and detention. I mentioned the extravagant lifestyle that the president used to have, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of things that were not going right. Right after it was dropped, it was already viral. You know, so a few hours later, before the morning, like, the song had already spread it like wildfire, you know what I'm saying?
Before long, Killer Ace feared he was being tailed by Jammeh's notorious death squad, the Junglers.
In my father's house where he lived, you know what I'm saying, they came there all black, climbed the house looking for me. You feel what I'm saying? When you see black at night, that's the, you know, that's the slaughter team, man. That's the jungler team, just in case you don't know. That's what we were living in. But when you see the black, nobody dares to speak. The whole neighborhood is quiet. They, you know what I'm saying? Everybody's silent. They pack you up, throw you in the boot, you're gone.
While Killer Ace fled to exile in Senegal, frustration with Jammeh back at home was gaining momentum. Under Gambia's constitution, 2016 was an election year. Many suspected Jammeh would try and rig the vote. But some activists were now calling for electoral reform. One of the most prominent was Solo Sandeng.
It was something always on the table. We wanted electoral reform because we feel that the laws were not good. But Solo Sandeng somebody who was really very strong against those kind of draconian laws.
Solo campaigned against what he saw as routine electoral abuses, such as handing voting cards to foreigners. In early 2016, Solo's son Muhammad worked as personal secretary to his father.
He had always been telling truth to power, you know, in any way that was going to be beneficial to us. I came from a very loving family, and then as a kid of a politician, I was exposed to politics very early.
As Solo spoke out, he took ever greater risks.
Each time I try to confront him, in a very nice way about that, what he says is that I'm not doing this for myself. I'm doing it for you. I'm doing it for a greater cause.
On the 14th of April 2016, Solo organizes a public rally protesting for electoral reform.
He was not naive. He knew what he was doing. He knew that he was challenging, a dictator.
Plainclothes security forces quickly surround the protesters and Sandeng is arrested. Kifa Barahama was covering the protest as a journalist. He saw the moment Solo was taken by the police and driven away.
I just come right at the window. I asked him, Solo, are you arrested? He just looked up my eyes and said, yes, I'm arrested. He said it, that these people, they wanted to kill me. You can go and write. This is what Solo Sandeng said from his mouth.
Another prominent activist, Nogoyin Jai, was taken alongside Solo. She saw firsthand what happened next.
Solo beta wat kilinela. Montro tembulo kono baro wato 12 kata talang killing ka usifal. Yembondi wol to PIU kan samba. Yen samba set kata NIA. Doli ya bulol mutateng, doli ya singul mutabela aren tabulo kam dencho kam. Iba busa ya busa wol to fafat. Ya lipaten. Fu sumiate bulo kon.
On the streets of Gambia's capital, it wasn't yet known for certain that Solo was dead. All the same, many already feared the worst. Solo's arrest and subsequent disappearance was a warning shot that might have silenced the campaign for democratic change. Instead, it had the opposite effect.
That was what was needed. We only needed a catalyst to start, confronting Yahya Jammeh in his face.
For long-time opposition leader Ousainou Dabo, Solo's suspected murder had lit a fuse.
If Solo could die for Gambia, why shouldn't we go out? If we are to die, let us also die.
2 days after Solo's disappearance, Dabo called for another protest.
I called up our members of Jackson as well that now, tomorrow, we are going out into the streets.
The aim of the protest was to get my dad and the rest of the people that he was arrested with released, and especially him, dead or alive. And just then, they started beating us. They started hitting us with rifle butts, with batons, and then it got wild.
I saw them started firing tear gases, while the other protesters and the other people were also stoning them.
We were also arrested. Still feel the pain here because I was winked off from the truck. I fell down and they kicked me.
Kifa sustained serious injuries during the protest.
Whenever I look at it, it's just like a nightmare to me. And seeing myself in this condition,
This picture was taken after the incident, after the time I was beaten.
In the days after the protest, Kifa was detained by police and says he was tortured.
Was born with a plastic bag, and this is the arm. This was the rifle butt that the security were using. They told me that you are going to drink our urine as your water. And they urine into a bottle. They open my mouth, take out the cloth from my mouth, and put the urine inside my... They forced me to drink it. And from there, they started smoking cigarette, offering the cigarette on my body. So I thought that oh my God, I'm going to die.
We had to leave because Gambia was not our Gambia anymore at that point in time.
Kifa was released and he and Solo's family escaped into exile in Senegal. It was only then that they received official news that Solo was indeed dead.
Sen elder bi call ma mu ne ma confirm nañ ne Solo dee na fa laa daanu ma xom boobu tamit xamatuma dara si àdduna.
It emerged that Solo had been denied a proper Muslim funeral. Without the knowledge of Solo's family, he'd been buried in a secret, shallow grave.
They just dumped him in a dugout hole as if he was a dog. I mean, they were subjected to the most horrendous treatment, brutalized, and showed how wicked some human beings can be to a fellow human being.
Me and my dad, we had plans. So anytime I thought about all that we spoke about, I thought, no, there's no way my dad isn't gone. He's still waiting for me somewhere, and I'll get to him at one point,
Outraged by the brutality of Solo's death, Gambians continued to protest.
You could see how things unfolded, how fear broke down, that you could say, we don't want Yaya Jammeh anymore. We want Yaya Jammeh down.
For the first time since the student protests of 2000, Gambians were now regularly taken to the streets to demand change.
There was resistance to his dictatorial tendencies was being built up.
Jammeh's brutality was also having consequences closer to home. Now, his own bodyguards were secretly turning against him. Still fearing the long reach of Jammeh, they've asked to be kept anonymous as they speak for the first time on television about what made them turn against the former president.
I have to protect my identity because still now, I feel I'm not 100% safe in the country.
The bodyguard's fear is rooted in personal experience of Jammeh's unpredictable temper.
Sometimes, when he's upset, he will just give out order for people to lock you up. So this is why now we start, having in mind how to overthrow him.
The bodyguard's chance for revenge came when they were privy to an alleged secret meeting between Jammeh and the mayor of Kanifing, Yankuba Koli.
One day, we were a part of the office security, and Mayor Yankuba Koli came to present the registered voter cards. Then he was given access to see the ex-president. Then he was telling the ex-president that we have gathered some registered voter cards for a start. And he was asked about the amount, and he said 300,000 plus. He was telling him it's a good start.
Koli strongly denies these allegations. Jammeh's bodyguards met to decide on a course of action. It's claimed the president's plan was to give out 300,000 fraudulent voting cards to foreigners. This many foreign votes would be more than enough to sway the election in a country of under 900,000 registered voters.
So, how can we solve this problem? Because if this man have to win for this next election, things are going to be tougher.
Destroying the voting cards would disrupt an attempt to rig the election, but it could have fatal consequences.
I was in fear because I was even thinking that they might kill my family.
They're very brave. It was risky.
If they were caught there, that was just summary execution. No doubt about that.
With less than 4 months to go before the election, the bodyguards drove to the ruling party's headquarters. 4 of the plotters approached the guard posted at the entrance.
We told him to shut up, and if he made any noise, we would kill him. We held him down, tore his clothes, and then tied him up.
Another 2 bodyguards broke into the building and set fire to the fake voting cards. All 300,000 of them.
That changed everything. And it happened shortly before the election, so it happened at a time when registrations for voters' cards had already concluded. You cannot restart it again.
Without fake foreign votes, the upcoming election stood a chance of being a fair contest. The challenge now was finding a candidate to stand against Jammeh. With Ousainou Darboe now in prison, the largest opposition party, the United Democratic Party, or UDP, looked to a new untested leader, the party's former treasurer, Adama Barrow.
I never even think of becoming a candidate or contesting as a presidential candidate. I never thought if I will work for government. I've always been private.
In October, the different rival opposition parties met to decide if Barrow should become an independent presidential candidate who could unite the opposition.
Your commitment to this opposition unity is overwhelming. Your belief that Yahya Jammeh has to go. You are on the right side of history, Anti-Fatmata Tambajang.
Adama Barrow was an unlikely candidate. Having once worked as a security guard in London and an estate agent in Gambia, he had little political experience. Yet Barrow's anonymity soon became his greatest asset.
Barrow was a clean slate. He was someone that was never known on the political scene. So I think it was easy for everyone to bet that they could have some sort of influence or control over him.
Muhammad Jagana is a childhood friend of Barrow, who became a key aide of the would-be president.
I think people use that anecdote that he was an accidental president. But they need to understand also that, as the governor of Kaduna said, Miss Universe is not the most beautiful woman in the world. Miss Universe is the woman who decided to put her face up there and won a contest.
And Adama Barrow, 308 votes.
From that day, I think everybody thought this boy can make a difference for this country. He can make a change.
Barrow agreed with opposition leaders that, if elected, he would only stay in power for 3 years. It was a crucial factor in uniting the coalition parties around their new leader.
Gambians are already tired of 22 years of Yahya Jammeh's misrule. And this year, by the grace of Allah, we shall end this misrule. Long live the coalition and long live Gambia.
United around a new leader, the opposition began their campaign across Gambia for the election scheduled for December 2016.
Yahya killed many people in this country.
Having fled to exile in Senegal to escape Jammeh's death squads, Killer Ace joined the fight through social media.
Being in Dakar, I had access to internet.
3G, super fast. I was doing live video after live video.
About time, you go, you join peaceful protest right now.
Social media was actually dictating, it was controlling the narrative. They were able to reach out to everyone in the rural areas to educate people about what was happening, and that played an important role.
Exiled in Senegal alongside Killer Ace, Mohammed added his voice to the campaign for change.
I worked with Killer Ace in his album, called The Lyrical Revolution. I did a spoken word poetry.
Year amongst years, revolted we, revolted against an evolved foe that broke our evolving hope, dried our cows, melted our wax, bust our drums, sucked our juice, became our duke, oppressed our people, raped our democracy with fake identity of divinity.
But fed, we got up, our lights we uplit, we the people from all walks of life, lyricists in songs, journals by journalists, and poets in poems.
Call it a struggle, a fight for some. There is an ultimate name, revolution.
All that was done, and we all did in our small ways, which together made great impact.
Back on the ground in Gambia, it seemed as if the time of the accidental president had finally come.
The support was there. People were ready. There was no doubt in my mind. With that crowd, I'm gonna make a difference.
There was this divine feeling. You would feel that there's no way how God would leave Gambia in the hands of Jammeh this time around.
Finally, it was time for Gambians to go to the polls. Yet, despite all the progress made by the opposition, many still feared that Jammeh would win.
It got into people's mindset that it was going to be impossible to remove Jammeh. So some people even believed that it was a waste of time or waste of votes voting for the opposition.
By the grace of the Almighty Allah, I have the biggest landslide in the history of my elections in this country. Thank you.
That does not happen.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's like, is it real that you are able to defeat Jammeh? Because psychologically, we feel that you cannot do it. That's what everybody thought.
And then, at a stroke, 22 years of Jammeh's rule seemed finally to be over.
I hereby declare Adama Barrow duly elected to serve as President of the Republic of the Gambia.
I was at one of my friend's house. I was very listening to the results.
I think everybody in the Gambia or in the world that was focusing on Gambia would remember where they were, what they were doing. I was actually at home preparing to go to mosque when I just heard the jubilation.
Basically, I was very, very happy.
We were happy, very much happy, because that day, that night, we didn't sleep, full of joy together.
That was the first time an opposition leader won elections. That was the first time it happened in this country after 52 years.
New year, new style, new president, new life. This is the Gambia having their freedom. This is the freedom for our youth.
That was immediately when the results was announced. People come out, started stoning all the pictures that he was having on the sky and the pictures that were pasted on the billboards. People started pulling them down.
And to everybody that voted for Barrow, and voted for peace, for change, all the people that fought to make sure Gambia is free, we love you, we are saying thank you.
Opposition leader Ousseynou Dabo hadn't even been able to vote. On election day, he was still locked up in prison.
I couldn't believe it. And then the main yard where you have the other convicts, they were banging their door, the doors of their cells, and the other side of the maximum security, cell number 4, they were also banging their door. And I came to realize, well, this is true.
It was quite significant, not just for Africa, but for, I believe, the rest of the world, Because prior to that, nobody had ever thought that one could defeat a dictator in a democratic process.
For some, however, in the midst of celebration, it was also a moment for reflection.
Suddenly, I could see Solo stand in front of me. And actually, my tears rolled down. I thought of several people who had been part of this struggle. And what they struggled for has come to fruition.
I could not celebrate when Jammeh lost. I only celebrated with my family, just the first we put in the air and we took a photo.
The next day, Barrow and his team waited by the phone for Jammeh to concede.
We were all waiting. It was like, everybody is looking forward to this call. Is it going to happen?
I'm calling you to wish you all the best. The Gambian people have spoken, and I have no reason to contest the will of the Almighty Allah. Hello? Are you hearing me?
It was unbelievable. It was just completely out of Jammeh's character. This wasn't Jammeh.
Gambians were astounded when Barrow left open the possibility of asking the outgoing president for advice.
And inshallah, if we need any advice, in any area we will always consult you.
Thank you. Though I'll be a farmer in Kanilai.
This is politics. This is diplomacy. This is diplomacy, so you have to use diplomatic language. But definitely, I don't need that. I don't think I would have seek for advice from Jammeh. I don't think so.
Then, just 1 week later, Jammeh made a televised announcement.
I hereby announce to you, Gambians, my total rejection of the election results and thereby annulling the elections.
And he changed his mind after 1 week. We have rejected the elections.
And it put everybody on alert. People were wondering what is going to happen next.
Expecting the worst, thousands of Barrow's supporters began to flee the country.
People didn't know their fate. Those who were seen celebrating in the streets during the euphoria when he considered defeat thought now we are going to die.
Fearing for Barrow's safety, Mohamed Jagana helped arrange the evacuation of the president-elect to Senegal.
I think it was definitely a good move to evacuate President-elect Barrow to a safe haven, whilst ECOWAS and the rest of the international community figure out how to stabilize the political situation.
With Barrow now in effective exile, Gambia's fate rested with ECOWAS, the economic community of West African states.
There was this ECOWAS head of states who were trying to mediate, myself and Jammeh. And I had a very good meeting with them.
So 2016 was a completely different era in ECOWAS's history. The great majority of leaders in the ECOWAS region or ECOWAS countries were led by democratically elected presidents. Now, those people would be very much willing to uphold democratic principles anywhere. That wouldn't have happened in the previous years.
Under the leadership of Liberia's democratically elected president Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, ECOWAS was in no mood for compromise. At a summit on the 17th of December, the group resolved that Jammeh should leave power within 5 weeks or face grave consequences.
Even though they wanted to use the diplomatic route, the use of force was also not taken off the table at all. That if push comes to shove, that force could be used to really remove Jammeh.
When the deadline passed with no concession from Jammeh, ECOWAS's patience finally ran out. On the 19th of January 2017, ECOWAS sent military forces to Gambia's border.
We saw the army, the economic forces being dispatched, and Jammeh knew that game was over, and this is serious business.
2 days later, it was all over.
I have decided today, in good conscience, to relinquish the mantle of leadership of this great nation with infinite gratitude to all Gambians.
Within hours, Jammeh was ready for a final send-off. To the music of a ceremonial band, he boarded a plane to seek refuge in Equatorial Guinea. And with Jammeh gone, it was finally time for Gambia's new president to return.
When we came down the plane, it was emotional to see. You could see the welcome, the passion people had. We spent 7.5 hours from Banjul International Airport going down to Westfield. And I was like, wow, the wind of change has arrived.
I feel deep in my heart. Gambians are out there supporting me and supporting the cause of change, supporting the cause for democracy. So this was huge. It was very emotional.
In the coming days, exiles like Killer Ace also returned to Gambia.
There can only be a new Gambia if we change the way we think, the way we act, the way we relate to each other. If we change our mind state, then there can be a new Gambia.
Long live the Republic. Long live the United People of the Gambia.
After almost a year in exile, Mohammed returned to Gambia in February 2017. Seeking closure for the death of his father, he chose to attend the police exhumation of his body.
We were invited as a family to come to the spot of the exhumation, and it happened right here at the corner, you know.
Solo's shallow grave was in the grounds of a building belonging to Jammeh's National Intelligence Agency.
He was brought in a pickup truck, behind a pickup truck, to be buried somewhere, you know, around a corner of this building. Coming to this environment really gives me memories of a great loss. It's really very, very somber, and it's cold. It's a very cold feeling.
Solo's suspected killers are now on trial, and that means that 2 years after his death, his body is still being held by the state, and Mohammed is unable to give his father a proper funeral.
I want to be all right. That's all I want. I just want to be okay, you know. I want to get my father's body and bury it. I want to get our father and bury his remains.
For Gambians like Mohammed, few things are more important than seeking closure on the crimes of the Jammeh regime. At the State House, all eyes are on the new president to deliver.
I've never worked for government. It's the first time, and I start from the top. I needed time also, you know. It's not this.
What has gone better under Barrow so far is that Barrow has not been as repressive as Jammeh was. He had upheld that promise to create an open political space where political parties and all kinds of opinions will be expressed.
One of Barrow's first access president was to set up the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparations Commission, or TRRC. Over months of hearings, over 40 witnesses have testified to the full extent of state brutality under Jammeh.
It's they themselves who line up these people to kill them, the juntas.
And kept at the army headquarters for 13 months and subjected us to different ways of torture for many, many days.
One of the most high-profile witnesses was Sana Sabali, the former vice chair of Jammeh's military regime. Sabali has himself admitted to carrying out both torture and summary executions. In 1995, the tables were turned when he himself was arrested by Jammeh's forces.
They would apply one of the electrodes on my neck, on my tongue, and then the other on my penis. And they would be adding the voltage slowly, voltage high and voltage down. And this all were accompanied with beatings. And yeah.
As a country, we have to move on. But moving forward, we have to accept the truth.
The TRRC is one step toward healing the wounds of the past. But as the names of those accused of the worst crimes are revealed, it also raises questions about the continued role of former Jammeh loyalists in the Barrow administration.
They electrocuted you?
Genau.
On your penis and on your tongue?
And my tongue.
Who did that?
Alhaji Martin.
Alhaji Martin, the man named as a torturer, has served under Barrow as a general in the Gambian army and testified at the TRRC.
Do you still deny that a hammer and electrocution machines were used on these people?
Yeah, only the bag.
You now saying that they placed the plastic bag over Sabali's head as he was beaten and asked questions.
Beaten, correct.
Now you confirm that.
Correct.
Okay, how do you describe that? Do you describe that as beating or you describe that as torture?
Torture.
And this was done under your supervision?
Exactly.
Nobody have thought that this thing will come to light. I never thought. He's a Gambian. We want to know the truth. And then we decide what to do. I think we wait for the recommendation of the TRRC. We don't want to preempt.
Barrow has now suspended Martin from the army. All the same, many still fear that the presence of other Jammeh loyalists in the security forces has led to a continued culture of police repression. "50 kilometers outside Gambia's capital, chaos unfolded when police clashed with locals protesting against the construction of a mine in the town of Farababanta. 3 protesters were killed.
Why? Because the same people within this old establishment are still here in existence in this new establishment, and they apply by the old mindset. The first thing you think of when you see people protesting, hey, no, okay, shut up, hey, put your hey, da-da-da-da. That's all you know.
Jammeh was here, now Barrow is here. That's the only thing that I have seen is change. Even the people who were working with Jammeh, I can say 50% of them or 75% of them, they are still in the system.
We have few people in the system, but these people are Gambians. That's why we have set up the TRRC to know the truth. You have to know the truth first. Then the truth will dictate what we do next.
For those disappointed with the new president, one comfort was Barrow's original promise to only remain in power for 3 years.
The 3 years was a verbal agreement, but in reality, it's not feasible. Because we have things to do. We feel that we can do that in 5 years, but 3 years is not possible.
According to the terms of the opposition memorandum signed when Barrow was elected leader of the opposition coalition, he committed not to stand for re-election. Now, however, his position seems less clear.
For me, winning election in 2021, that is the Gambian people. It's the only way to get the presidency is the Gambian people who vote for you. That is not my decision, it's the decision of the Gambian people.
Is a man whom hadn't been vetted properly by the people, because people were hoping he would be resigning in 3 years. Now it seems, since Barrow ascended to power, he is showing signs that he is determined to go beyond the 3-year term. And quite simply, the country has so many challenges. we face a lot of challenges. We do not think that Barrow is equipped to be able to take us through.
Is this the Gambia we want? Yes or no, huh?
For activists like Killer Ace, disappointment with Barrow means it's time to start campaigning for change all over again.
The Gambia we want. I said the Gambia we want. Is this the Gambia we want?
It's about the people. It's about these people. They have a say. The young people, the old people, you know, the disenfranchised, the grassroots people. We have to bring it to them, you know, bring it to their doorsteps and let them play their part.
We have a job to do, and we have to remain focused and do that. And we want to do that before 2021.
Only time will tell if Adama Barrow makes good on his promise to uphold democracy. Yet for Gambians like Mohammed, whose family were among those who fought hardest in the revolution that brought him to power, they're still prisoners of Gambia's past. This half-finished building was once intended as a home for Mohammed and his family.
I suppose that should be my bedroom.
Construction stopped, however, when Mohammed's father was murdered in the struggle to overthrow Jammeh.
And our daddy, he was going to give us all that. He just went away, but he was going to do all that for us, you know. It gives me a lot of mixed feelings and makes me want to cry, but the only reason why I don't cry is I know I'm supposed to stay strong, you know, and keep on what he started. So there's nothing like crying. It's not going to solve anything about it.
Today, these ruins stand as a reminder of the human cost of Gambia's democratic revolution and its uncertain rewards. After more than 2 decades of Jammeh's authoritarian rule, expectations for change in Gambia were always going to be sky high. In time, Adama Barrow may deliver. Either way, the revolution of 2016 taught all Gambians a crucial lesson.
The youth broke the spell. It was the youth who was like, yo, it's enough.
The spirit of free speech that championed Barrow in opposition is now holding him to account in power.
Because of the newfound democracy, everybody is engaged. Everybody is speaking his or her mind.
Now you can easily convince people to come out in mass numbers and hold protests. Killer Ace and others have done it before, and that taught everyone a lesson that can be done.
I will continue the fight. I'm not scared. We are not scared.
Through the revolution of 2016, a whole generation has found its voice. In the face of new challenges,
in a strange place, something stops you, challenges test your strength. A rush of adrenaline, the light, the air. It is the moment